The 1970s gave us muscle cars that weren't just fast, they were pure attitude on wheels. These beasts ripped through the quarter mile with raw horsepower, wild styling, and just enough recklessness to terrify insurance companies. Today we're counting down the 10 fastest 1970s muscle cars to ever scorch the strip, and trust me, number 1 will remind you why this decade is still called the golden age of speed. Number 10, 1970 Ford Torino Cobra, 13.9 seconds. The Mustang may have ruled the posters on bedroom walls, but Ford had a secret weapon hiding in plain sight, the Torino Cobra. At first glance, it looked almost ordinary, like something your uncle might drive to work on a Monday morning, but under the hood was anything but ordinary. The Cobra packed a 429 cubic inch big block V8, and if you ordered the drag pack with the Super Cobra jet setup, you unlocked 375 horsepower ready to tear up the quarter mile. Motor Trend tested one in 1970 and hit 13.9 seconds at 101 miles per hour. That's serious speed for a car that still had room for the family. Even more impressive, it rocketed from 0 to 60 in just 5.8 seconds, making it a genuine threat to European exotics of the era. Imagine pulling up next to a Porsche or Ferrari at a stoplight in 1970 and then blowing past it in what looked like a plain Jane Torino. That's the definition of a sleeper. Number 9, 1971 Ford Mustang Boss 351, 13.8 seconds. By 1971, the Mustang had grown larger and heavier, and critics were starting to say it lost its edge. Enter the Boss 351, a model built specifically to shut those critics up. This car was more than just a Mustang, it was a muscle car with something to prove. Ford stuffed in a heavily massaged 351 Cleveland V8 that churned out 330 horsepower and 370 pound-feet of torque. It wasn't just raw numbers either. The Boss 351 got forged rods, aluminum pistons, a sky-high 11.7 to 1 compression ratio, and a carburetor made just for this engine. Translation, this car wasn't meant to cruise, it was meant to dominate. Motor Trend's tests proved it. 13.8 seconds in the quarter mile, bone stock. For comparison, that's quicker than some of the big block Mustangs with larger displacements. The Boss 351 showed that smart engineering could keep the Mustang at the front of the pack, even as emissions regulations and rising insurance premiums started choking the muscle car era. And here's the thing, while everyone drools over the Boss 429 today, the Boss 351 was actually the more practical performer. It was cheaper, more street-friendly, and easier to maintain. It was the kind of Mustang you could daily drive during the week, and then embarrass Chevys and Dodges with at the drag strip on Saturday night. Number 8, 1971 Corvette LS6 454, 13.7 seconds stock, 12.6 seconds modified. If the muscle car era had a crown jewel from Chevrolet, it was the Corvette, and the 1971 LS6 454 was one of the last big block monsters before emissions strangled performance. Only 188 were ever made, making it one of the rarest Corvettes in history. If you owned one, you didn't just have a car, you had bragging rights for life. In bone stock trim, Carcraft testers ripped off a 13.7 second quarter mile at just over 102 miles per hour, but Corvette owners are tinkerers by nature, and the LS6 responded beautifully to a little hot rodding. With upgraded 4.56 gears, headers, side pipes, sticky tires, and premium fuel, it shredded the quarter mile in 12.6 seconds at 114 miles per hour. That's blistering performance even by today's standards. And remember, this was 1971 on factory steel wheels. What made the LS6 so special wasn't just its numbers, it was the aura. This was a Corvette that could look glamorous pulling up to a fancy dinner and then transform into a fire-breathing dragster the moment the light turned green. Number 7, 1970 Dodge Challenger RT 446 pack, 13.6 seconds. When Dodge rolled out the Challenger in 1970, it was aimed squarely at the Mustang and Camaro, but the 446-pack version proved it wasn't just a pretty face, it was a drag strip brute. With 3 two-barrel carburetors feeding a massive 440 cubic inch V8, this Mopar cranked out 390 horsepower and an earth-shaking 490 pound-feet of torque. Carcraft tested one just before its official release and clocked a 13.6 second quarter mile at 104 miles per hour. That made it one of the fastest street machines of its day. Sure, the legendary Hemi got all the headlines, but many enthusiasts found the six-pack to be more livable and far easier to find. Dodge built over 1,600 six-pack Challengers in 1970 compared to fewer than 300 Hemi cars. The six-pack was that perfect mix of availability and absurd performance. It was still scary fast, but just tame enough that you could survive the drive home without white-knuckling the wheel the whole way. Number 6, 1970 Plymouth Superbird, 13.5 seconds. If the Superbird looks like it was designed in a cartoon sketchbook, that's because it basically was. Plymouth built this wild winged road runner specifically to lure Richard Petty back to NASCAR, and the results were unforgettable. With its beaked nose cone and skyscraper rear wing, it looked like nothing else on the road. But the Superbird wasn't just for show, it packed serious performance. Testers ran the quarter mile in 13.5 seconds, which was jaw-dropping for a car that could also turn heads at the track. Under the hood, buyers could choose between the 446 pack or the legendary 426 Hemi, both capable of embarrassing rivals on the strip. Here's the twist though. Wind tunnel testing showed that Plymouth's design changes actually made it less aerodynamic than Dodge's Charger Daytona from the year before. So technically it was a little slower, but with looks this outrageous, nobody cared. The Superbird was an instant legend, and today it's one of the most collectible muscle cars of all time. Number 5, 1970 Buick GS 455 Stage 1, 13.3 seconds. Buick isn't the first brand most people think of when they hear muscle car, but the GS 455 Stage 1 made sure everyone paid attention. Beneath its understated looks was one of the nastiest torque monsters of the entire era. Officially, Buick rated it at 360 horsepower, but real-world dyno tests suggest it was making well over 400. Motor Trend tested it in 1969 and laid down a 13.38 second quarter mile at 105 miles per hour, crowning it the quickest American production muscle car of 1970. And it wasn't just fast, it was refined. This wasn't a bare-bones street racer. It had Buick's trademark comfort mixed with brutal speed. With a Stage 1 under your right foot, you could demolish the strip on Saturday night and cruise in quiet style on Sunday morning. That balance of class and muscle is why the GS 455 Stage 1 is still considered one of the most underrated cars of the golden era. Number 4, 1970 Plymouth Road Runner Hemi 426, 13.3 seconds. The Road Runner was Plymouth's way of proving that muscle cars didn't need to be expensive to be fun or fast. With its cheeky beep beep horn and cartoon mascot, it felt playful. But under the hood of the Hemi version, it was all business. Powered by the legendary 426 cubic inch Hemi V8, officially rated at 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque, this bird was no joke. Supertalk magazine tested it against the 446 pack back in 1969, and the Hemi Road Runner ripped through the quarter mile in 13.34 seconds at 107.5 miles per hour. The Roadrunner was the perfect example of Mopar magic, equal parts fun and ferocious. It was a car that didn't take itself too seriously until you floored the gas. Then, it was all speed and smoke. Number 3, 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 LS6, 13.1 seconds. If you had to pick one car that symbolized the peak of the muscle car era, the Chevelle SS 454 LS6 might be it. Aggressive styling, thunderous exhaust, and the kind of straight-line performance that left rivals shaking. Under its hood sat the LS6, a 454 cubic inch monster officially rated at 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. On paper, those numbers were already jaw-dropping. In practice, they were even scarier. Hot Rod magazine clocked it at 13.44 in the quarter, while CarCraft squeezed out an even quicker 13.12 seconds at 107 miles per hour. The Chevelle wasn't just about speed, it was about presence. It looked like it wanted to fight you in the parking lot, and when you fired it up, everyone within 3 blocks knew it. For many enthusiasts, the LS6 Chevelle was the muscle car to beat, and even today, it's one of the most collectible GM cars ever made. Number 2, 1970 Dodge Challenger RT Hemi 426, 13.1 seconds. If you wanted Dodge's baddest Challenger in 1970, you checked the box for the 426 Hemi and then held on for dear life. Dodge only built 287 Hemi-powered Challenger RTs that year, making them rarer than the Hemi Cuda but no less terrifying. CarCraft tested one equipped with a 4-speed manual and aggressive 4.10 gears and ripped through the quarter mile in 13.10 seconds at 107 miles per hour. The Hemi was rated at 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque, but much like other Mopars of the era, that rating was famously understated. The Challenger RT Hemi had everything: muscle car looks, brutal performance, and exclusivity. While the Cuda tends to get the spotlight, the Challenger proved it could hang with the very best. Number 1, 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda, 13.1 seconds. And here it is, the king of the strip. The 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda is one of the most iconic muscle cars ever built, and for good reason. CarCraft tested it and clocked the quarter mile in 13.1 seconds at 107 miles per hour, putting it neck and neck with its Dodge Challenger cousin. At its heart was the 426 Hemi V8, 425 horsepower, 490 pound-feet of torque, and an exhaust note that could shake windows off their frames. From 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds, the Hemi Cuda was every bit as brutal as its reputation suggests. But what truly sets it apart is the legacy. With its wide stance, aggressive styling, and wild high-impact paint options like limelight green and inviolet purple, it wasn't just fast, it was unforgettable. Plymouth only built 652 Hemi Cudas in 1970, making them incredibly rare. Today, they're worth small fortunes at auction, but back then, they were simply the baddest thing on the road.